Good morning, everybody. I would like to talk about what happened and transpired in the last city council meeting. There was a lot of things that were developing, so I just like to go through it. Not only that, but also give a little bit of explanation of why I voted the way I did. First thing that popped up was 6.1. The developer came in for Sonoma Verde and was talking about future amenities and their timelines. What we've been able to get from that is that they're expecting the baseball fields and the ball fields in general to be able to come up. They're going to be developing those somewhere around July 2020. And the developer gave their excuses as far as not having enough fill dirt because it's a holding pond, as well as also giving themselves flexibility for modifying the timeline for weather, which I think 2020 is a little far out, especially July 24, 2020. So for producing a ball field almost a year from today, it's pretty far. They were talking about producing the trail system that was already been platted and has already been zoned out for it, and they're going to be getting that hopefully completed by September to October of 2019. So that's going to be coming pretty quick. The amenity center, they're talking about closing in a portion of the pavilion so that way the facility can be used year round. And the current developer was talking about having that start in October after the swimming season's over. So after the pool and pavilion is no longer in its max peak capacity, they're going to come in October and start the construction process, and that'll carry on for the rest of the year. Now, item 6.2, we had a public hearing, and the public hearing is supposed to be about the PID, but it grew into several different types of topics. It also developed into a Q&A with the developer's legal team, and I think there was a lot of good information that got transpired there, as well as a lot of things that a lot of the Q&A for questions and answers that I didn't know about that I was actually going to ask about. So it was actually good to hear that come out organically and have people from the community actually ask the developer's lawyer these questions. So I think it turned out to be a good thing. It went a little off topic at certain points, but I think it was really, really, really good. Now, to the nitty gritty of this is item 6.3 and 6.4. It was for the PID bond. Now, just give a little background on the history of the PID is when the developer comes in and wants to produce infrastructure for a new phase, they got to get that approved and everything, for example, road locations and whatnot. So all that was approved by previous council, and the stage for this PID bond has been set long before me and other council members actually got there. The thing about the PID is that when we entered the agreement with the developer, by entering in that legal agreement with the developer, legally bound the city to produce our end of the bargain. So inside that development agreement, the developer completed everything that the original city council asked of them, except for League Road. League Road is part of that agreement. However, this new developer who's had the project for 10 months plus, has said that that League Road is set to be completed within 30 days. So they gave me a hard timeline, and they gave me that timeline on record in public meeting that the League Road resurfacing would happen within 30 days. So 95% of everything that the developer has promised to produce this PID, including starting League Road and having a completion date, has been finalized. The problem is that if the PID doesn't get paid, if the developer and the city entered this agreement, like I said, this agreement happened before I got in, And you could modify the agreement between the phases. Is this that right now we're at the end of the PID agreement for phase 2, and there really is no modifying it. The conditions were already set. The developer went out to fulfill the conditions. The conditions were met. And now it's the burden of the city to fulfill their end of the obligation by issuing bonds for the PID. The developer, having legally completed everything that they needed to do to be issued PID bonds, if the city does not issue them PID bonds, the city breaks the legal agreement and opens the city up for lawsuits, which is exactly what happened during with previous mayor and previous council. What they did is they went above and beyond what they were supposed to do. They made public commentary in meeting about legal action, and then got the city involved in legal action, costing the city hundreds of thousands of dollars, wasting hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I'm talking specifically about the cell tower that's right there in the middle of town. Previous council, previous mayor made legal threats during an actual public hearing, during public meeting. That started the conditions for legal action, which caused the city to have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees to fight. And eventually we couldn't afford the lawsuit. So if we would have entered that lawsuit and we would have lost, it would have bankrupted the city. Now, fast forward to what's going on today, is we have the PID bond. The developer has already put into place the infrastructure, and they're going to continue to put infrastructure. When I mean infrastructure, I mean roads, sewage, water, water lines, I should say, sewer lines, water lines, and roads. The PID bond is going to pay specifically for infrastructure. It doesn't pay for amenities or anything else like that. And since the conditions of this PID bond have already been met 100%, if the city does not fulfill its obligation in issuing out those bonds, it opens up the city to a lawsuit with the developer. And it'll be a lawsuit over a $10 million PID bond. So it'd be a big lawsuit. So I looked at this and put my emotions off to the side a little bit and looked at it in a purely logical sense as a councilman, looking after the benefit of not only the city, but Sonoma Verde. If we tie up this PID bond in legal action, we won't win, because the developer completely fulfilled the end of their obligation. So you could shop this out to any court you want in Texas. Anytime any judge looks at this, and they're going to show that the developer fulfilled 100% of their legal obligation and the city's withholding it because of something that's not there, we're going to lose. And we're going to lose that lawsuit. So not only are we going to tie up the city legally into a lawsuit that we cannot win, we're going to have legal services being paid for that lawsuit that we cannot afford. And at the same time, development in Sonoma Verde pretty much stops, which means if Sonoma Verde is not being developed and new houses aren't being put in, the development fails. And if the development fails, it's not good for the residents of Sonoma Verde, and it's not good for the city. So looking at this in a purely logical sense, everything has been put into place before I got there. I had a decision. Do I fulfill the city's obligation with this PID, giving me the options later on in phase 3? Now, as soon as phase 3 starts to come in and starts to be developed and the plan starts formulating there, that's when I'm going to have the ability to open up amendments and create amendments for the residents of Sonoma Verde. So if the majority of the residents do want different amenities. They do want certain things whatsoever. During phase 3, when we're negotiating for setting up that PID, is when we're going to have the opportunity to have more flexibility there. But as far as what we did last night, everything we did last night was set in play a long time ago. And by not fulfilling the city's obligation that the city promised to do, would open us up to legal lawsuit. And I could not see the city winning that lawsuit. And I did not want to put the city through something like that. So voting logically, I had to put the bond through. Now, let's see here. Having said that, do I want the developer to have a more of an open forum with the citizens of Sonoma and residents of Sonoma Verde? Yes. Do I want all the problems in Sonoma Verde to be addressed? Yes. It was the PID bond vote the forum to do that? Unfortunately, no. It wouldn't have solved anything. It actually would have made things worse. But moving forward, when we get into phase 3, this current council will have the ability to make alterations to have the ability to work with the developer for alterations that is going to benefit the city residents of Sonoma Verde. So that being said, I'm not happy with it, but it's something that I had to do to make sure that the city didn't get into a lawsuit. Now going forward, the 6.5 was the during our original agreement with MCVFD, former council voted to keep the Station 2 satellite as part of the MCVFD. Now the city is still 100% responsible financially for this, but the ownership and title of that facility is still with the MCVFD. So we're paying the utilities, we're paying all its bills, we're taking care where the city's maintaining all its maintenance. So that item, strictly what it did is it changed the title over from the MCVFD over to the city. The no action came out of the executive session. No action came out of that discussion. It's still an ongoing topic that we're trying to work through. And if you guys have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer them. Obviously, I can't answer anything about the executive session because it's a privileged topic till it becomes public. But when it comes to this, when it comes to the PID for Sonoma Verde, when it comes to what the developer told us he was going to produce for as far as the remaining of the amenities, and as far as what you, the citizen, can do with your HOA, one of the things that the city can't get involved in is the city can't get involved with being the HOA police, more or less. The thing is that once we start, once the city starts getting involved with one HOA, then we have to get involved with all the other. It's a Pandora's box that we won't be able to close. Now there is a venue and there's options for you if you're having problems with your HOA. There's lots of legal options, as well as there's lots of options within your HOA itself to go through these issues. Unfortunately, Sonoma Verde it needs to be 75% built out before you actually have ownership control of your HOA. It's one of the things that I dealt with when I lived in Rockwall, the development that I lived in. Pretty much the entire 8 years that I was there, we did not have owner control of our HOA because the development dragged on for so long. Another thing about this PID going through is that the sooner that those lots can be developed, it's going to transfer more ownership of the HOA over to the residents. So the sooner we can get Sonoma Verde to the 75% tile range is when the transition between developer HOA and ownership HOA can happen. So by issuing out this bond, it also gets the residents one step closer towards residential control. One of the things that I experienced, and like I said in my last HOA that I lived in, is that the developer retained the HOA for almost 8 years, plus after several phases have already been built, because the developer kept dragging their feet on when they're going to produce the last phase, and they were holding on to that. And unfortunately, that's something I don't want to see happen here. The sooner that we could get this development produced and the lots can be sold and the houses to be built, the sooner that the Sonoma Verde HOA can go over to ownership control. And that way the residents of Sonoma Verde will actually have complete holdover control of their HOA and be able to modify things from there. So if the residents of HOA want a splash park or any other amenity that does not come to fruition, it'd just be a simple HOA vote and it's done. Do I want to see more amenities in Sonoma Verde? Yes, I would like to see more amenities in Sonoma Verde. And I'd like to see more amenities for a couple of reasons. A lot of the residents are asking for those amenities. But B, a development that has a development that has a healthy amount of amenities, is going to be a lot easier to sell. So if you have a healthy amount of amenities and people come in and they look around and they get the wild eyes and they look at everything that they're getting, they're going to be more likely to be able to willing to buy into that development. And the sooner that we can get 75% of those lots over to ownership, the sooner that we can get the HOA to ownership. So having amenities, I think, is a win-win. Yeah, the developer's going to have to pony up more money, but it's going to make it easier for them to sell lots, and they're able to produce this development a lot faster. So a development not dragging out is going to be good for the developer, good for the city, good for the residents, and lots selling faster and people wanting to come into Sonoma Verde is going to be good for the city, good for the development and the developer. So it's a win-win for everybody. I'm going to encourage that they look into that. Unfortunately, with this last PID bond, there's nothing I could do because of legal obligations to this from the city to the developer agreement, I should say. It wasn't specifically to this developer. This developer's only had the project for 10 months. I'm going to be working on this. I'm going to make sure that when we get to phase 3, that all these kinks are worked out, that these open gaps, these large, vague open gaps aren't there. So we're gonna work on this and make sure that this doesn't happen again. So that way, as we go into phase 3, everything is 100% understood, everything gets 100% done, and there's not an open gap in there where we're not going to have the ability and have our hands tied to a legal document like we did last night. So thank you very much. I appreciate the time. If you got any questions or comments, please send them over. I'll be more than happy to do everything I can to answer them for you. I appreciate everybody and have a great day. Thank you.